Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode. Today, I will be talking about the centralization of mining, specifically found in Bitcoin. Is this a terrible thing? Is it not a big deal? Really interesting topics and things to discuss about incentives and why people participate and how incentives modify people's behavior and rationality. So before I get into that, I do want to do a really quick heads up. I was notified on Twitter last night that someone has been imitating me and sending out emails saying there's some kind of like investment thing I've been working on. It is not me. Tis the season of scammers now because the prices of crypto have been coming up as the bull market returns. Scammers are frickin' everywhere. So whenever you are thinking that you're talking to someone legitimate in this space, make sure to reference how they are contacting you. Is the email that they're contacting you actually legitimate? Is the @username on Twitter slightly misspelled? Definitely reference and verify everything. If you guys want to reach out to me, I have my crypto tips email listed in the about section of this channel. If you have received emails from me, it is probably not me because I do not typically reach out to people. That's just the way it is. If you guys want to contact me for suggestions or comments or anything, definitely you can send an email there. Again, you can find the legitimate email in the about section of this channel. So now that that's out of the way, let's talk about centralized mining. Let's get into it. Okay, so the doomsday scenario for Bitcoin, there's a couple of them, but this is definitely an issue that is very often brought up, especially by people who are not such a fan of Bitcoin or are trying, I don't know what their intentions are. Regardless, the issues that they're bringing up are valid in the fact that it is revolving around this one knee-jerk reaction word that is centralization. I'm not going to explain this one away saying that it isn't an issue, but I do want to address what Satoshi had to say about the prospect of centralized mining found in Bitcoin, how he was pretty much knowing it was going to be an inevitability, and how the incentive models of Bitcoin would ultimately help modify the behavior of those participating in the network to play by the rules rather than try to fight the system and pretty much strong arm their way onto the network. So for those of you who are just new to this cryptocurrency space, I'm going to break it down very simply for you just so you have an idea to kind of grasp this concept of mining. Miners are the computers or entities that are responsible for organizing the transactions being sent on the Bitcoin network or on any network, and they are the ones who essentially validate them and organize them into blocks and submit them to be approved by the other nodes on the blockchain in order to be solidified into the blockchain and achieve that immutability, meaning that it cannot be undone or changed. Now, the way a decentralized network works is that each miner and each node has to come to a consensus in order to validate transactions. If one person wanted to, let's say I have 1 Bitcoin and I want to spend that 1 Bitcoin 10 times, I would need to obtain or have the amount of computing power needed to essentially override every other computer that is operating to mine or to secure the Bitcoin network. At this point, that is pretty much an impossibility. At the very least, it is incredibly expensive. This concept is called a 51% attack, and it is when one entity or when multiple entities come together to agree, to collude, to do what they want to with that blockchain. It sounds like a scary situation, understandably so. I mean, who would want to participate in a network where one centralized entity can do whatever they want with a monetary supply? Anyway, here is where the incentive models for participating in the Bitcoin network or for any cryptocurrency network comes into the picture. I came across a really interesting article that breaks this all down, explains why centralized mining isn't necessarily the worst case scenario or even a negative for the Bitcoin network. I'm not necessarily in that boat to say, that it's not a bad thing, but it at least gives an explanation or some perspective on what incentivizes people to participate in the network and what is at least monetarily in their best interest in how they participate with the network. So I'll be sharing that link down below for you to check out. But it is interesting. It talks about, again, this incentive model and how, although you would think that someone who has enough power to pretty much do whatever they want with however many Bitcoins that they want on the network, they can deny transactions, they can double spend however many coins that they want, it would... The thing about Bitcoin is that a large majority of its value comes from its network effect. And something tells me in this world of decentralized networks and cryptocurrencies as they are proliferating throughout the world, and we have all of these beautiful different options of using this kind of technology, if one particular network, say Bitcoin, were to be overrun by one megalomaniac guy who wants to do whatever the heck he wants with it, something tells me the price of those coins that he would be mining ultimately also subsequently needing to mine in order to have control over the network. He would be mining coins also. Ultimately, that would be what would kind of sustain his ability to afford to control the network. The price of those coins on the open market would plummet like a rock down a cliff. So it's this really interesting incentive model where it is definitely much more in their best interest to actually play by the rules, to not try to have majority control, or at least, overtly have majority control over the network, because that in itself would severely affect the network effect and the price of that coin, and they would just be losing billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. Even though technically it would be in their best interest to play by the rules, I'm not particularly a fan of this thought of centralized mining, and I'm certainly not defending it or saying, it's not a problem, not something that we should try to remedy in the future somehow. This is also why I am definitely a fan of those cryptocurrency networks that pivot their algorithms whatever they need to in order to avoid things like ASIC miners being able to run their algorithms. And because these are the very expensive, very hard to get kind of computer chips that allow for very efficient mining. It ultimately is a barrier for those who want to help decentralize the mining and the security of the network by just simply doing so with their own CPUs or GPUs. So if that's something that you're interested in, if you're interested in, voting with your dollar, voting with your crypto, and supporting certain coins or networks that you think will do their best to avoid centralized mining, definitely look for ASIC resistant algorithms and those coins that are really putting an effort to achieve that. This concept, by the way, also applies to proof of stake coins, because perhaps even more directly, in order to benefit from being a miner of proof of stake coins, you have to physically have a large stake of those coins. You have to oftentimes very large amount of coins, and the more coins that you have, the more profitable you will be for mining that coin. Think of masternode coins and things like that. So again, same thing, because they're investing in that coin to participate in the network to the point of overriding that network, they would have to be heavily invested in that network and that coin, and it is therefore also in their best interest to not plummet that coin. Now, here's the thought about governments, right? And there's always this fear of like, what if, let's say the US government has access to multiple supercomputers that they could use to override the Bitcoin network just to run it into the ground, because they're not interested in currency competition. They like being the top dog. Now, the main benefit I will say here to Bitcoin is that it is by far the largest network for cryptocurrencies. And then that way it is also the most secure because it has a whole lot of computing power behind it. The more computing power behind it, the more powerful and expensive it is to override said computing power. Here's my concern, at least slightly here, is the logic between the argument that I just provided you of the incentive models for participating and playing by the rules far outweighs anyone trying to force their way to double spend or to prevent transactions from happening. Is if governments were to try to do this, they're not necessarily always the most logical or rational thinkers. They are often out for a profit, so this could go either way. But let's say that one government goes crazy and they're trying to override the Bitcoin network. If that's a concern for you, I know it's a scary one. I'm going to leave you here with this video from Andreas Antonopoulos. I love these little sound bites that he has. They're so freaking powerful. If you're a fan of Andreas, or if you're just getting familiar with him, definitely check out this video. I'll post it up in this corner somewhere, of his greatest hits of some really powerful and knowledgeable talks that he has said. So you can learn a little bit more from him. But without further ado, I'm going to leave you guys with some Andreas Antonopoulos knowledge, hit you with some of that good stuff. So that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will be seeing you guys soon. In the meantime, have a good one.
Do you have any concerns about a large nation state that has interest in just actively destroying Bitcoin to make their own, super rigs and design chips and just throw hundreds of millions or billions of dollars to intentionally disrupt the blockchain?
Yeah, I don't worry about that at all. This cannot be done with Bitcoin anymore. This is something that can only be done with nascent altcoins. Bitcoin has achieved a level of computing that no single nation state can overthrow it through computation alone. The effort to do so would require a massive covert operation of chip fabrication, then the coordinated assault that would give them dominance over the next block for 10 minutes until we kick those bastards off the network, rework the protocol around them. They would be revealed. They would have lost $1 billion doing this, and all they got to do was one double spend. Now, here's the thing. Long before we get to that point, they figure out that if they just let this stuff run, they can actually get some Bitcoin as a reward, because the incentive structure actually works. And so I'm not worried about that. And a lot of people are watching the blockchain. And as I said before, what are they going to do? So they take over and they fork the blockchain and they go somewhere, right? They've created an alternative blockchain. Great. What are we going to do? Who's going to join the NSA blockchain? Anybody want to jump on FedCoin? So we're all going to stay on the old fork. Difficulty will go down. It will get more profitable for the miners who stayed behind, and we'll carry on with our coin, and they can go mine whatever the hell they want on their alternative blockchain. They achieve nothing. They can't make protocol changes because, as I said, 5 constituencies in consensus, and it would take $1 billion to pull the most ridiculous Keystone Cops failure in history. Plus, this would actually require government that can do IT.